Okay, in this video we're going to talk about the index and match functions. And index and match are used similarly to VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP, but you don't have to worry about the data being right next to each other. So in that sense, it makes it superior, more effective, and easier to use. Okay, so we're going to be using this table, which is included in the downloads for the lecture. And these are just random numbers. And most times when you want to analyze data from something like this, you'd go to a new sheet, and then you type equals and hit the control page up key to grab the data. And by the way, I know bananas is spelt wrong, and I'll show you why in just a minute. And you'd grab, say, the topic that you want to look at and the year that you want to look at just by selecting these here. And then, okay, you grab that, and there it is. And then it makes it easier to do whatever analysis you want to do. However, occasionally you might end up moving data around. So let's say we want events and bananas to change places. So we're going to insert a row above events and hit Alt-H-I-R, and I used Shift spacebar to select the whole row. Then we go up here and Shift spacebar to select the whole row up here, Control-V to paste, and Alt-H-D-R deletes the empty row. So now you go back to your sheet where you're doing your calculations and all of your references are messed up. So if you use index match to do this, then you wouldn't run into this problem. So let's delete these and start over with index match. So index match incorporates the labels in your cells into those values. So let's just clear the rest of this out and let's get right into the function. Equals index. So the way index works is it asks for an array and then your row number and then your column number. And that's how you find the number you're looking for. And an array is just a collection of data. So in this case, we're going to navigate back to sheet 1 using Control Page Up, and we're going to select the whole row of data next to apples. So we click here and say Shift Control Right to select the entire row, then Shift Control Down arrow to select the entire array. So now I have everything selected. And I'm going to hit F4 to make these absolute. So let's call this area the pond. And our data is the fish, so all of our fish are in the pond. So any fish that we want to find is right here. And we can edit our function right here in the function bar without having to go back to sheet 2. So we hit comma, and you could just put in a row number 6 or 7 or 8, but match is going to help make this a lot easier. The match function is going to help us find our fishermen. And these labels here and here are our fishermen that are going to help us to find our fish or our data. So we type in match and then tab, and our lookup value is going to be back on sheet 2, and it's going to be in column D right next to our information. And we'll enter in a label there later. And we'll hit F4 3 times to lock just the column, not the row, because we're going to copy this down and over, and we want it to still reference the labels in column D, or our fishermen. So that's our lookup value. Next we need a lookup array, so we hit comma. Our lookup array is going to be all of the labels in all of the rows where our data is. So we're going to select the labels for the rows 5 through 12 and hit F4 to lock those references, and then comma, and then the match type. And 99% of the time you'll use 0 for exact match. There are rare instances where you'll use 1 or -1, but we're not going to get into that for this purpose. Most of the time you'll do an exact match because you want the exact spelling of that label. So that means you have to get all the spelling exactly right in sheet 2 for this to work. So that's important. Okay, so that match function identifies the rows. Close parentheses to finish the match function. So now we're back to our index function. So we just did our row number, and now we're going to do our column number. Now column number has these brackets, which means it's optional. Well, let's just hit a comma. So we could just put 1, and you'd just have one column selected in your array, and that would be just fine. But in this case we have 5 columns, so that wouldn't work. We have to identify which column we're going to use. So we're going to use the match function again, hit tab, go to our lookup value, and we're going to create a spot up here. And this time we'll hit F4 2 times to lock the row number, but not the column because we're going to copy this across the columns. Okay, so where is our array for the fisherman across the columns? Let's go back to sheet 1, click on 2012, and then Control-Shift right arrow to select the whole array, and hit F4 to lock the array. The arrays should always be locked. Comma 0 for exact match. Close the parentheses for the match formula, and then we close the parentheses for the index formula. So now we've nested 2 match functions into one index function. Now when I hit enter, you'll see I have an error because it doesn't have any results yet, because it's referencing blank cells. Oh, and I want this match to be referencing E6 rather than F6, but that's simple. You just grab it and move it over. Okay, so now we can put in our references. Let's start with the year. We hit equals, and then we'll come over to sheet 1 because this has exact spelling. So we just click on this, and it brings in 2014. And to show you how important matching up your spelling is, even if I type bananas wrong like it is in the spreadsheet, if I add a space behind it and hit enter, it still is going to give us an error, because even that space is enough to throw it off. So that's why I want to use equals and then select that cell and grab it exactly how it's spelled. So even though it's spelled wrong, it's still going to reference correctly. And see, now it's grabbing the number that we want, 66207 here and 66207 over here. So now to show you the magic, let's see what happens when this reference moves. So let's go down here and select 2 cells and hit Alt H I R to insert 2 rows, Shift spacebar to select this whole row, and Control C to copy it, Control V to paste it in here, Alt H D R to delete the row, Alt H D R to delete this other row. Oh, and I forgot to delete the equals to find the bananas. I didn't take the formula. So let's go back here and grab bananas again. And this time we'll take that formula out of it, and then Alt H V V to paste it just as a value, no formula. Now let's move everything around again, see if our reference still works. So we'll go up here and say Alt H I R to insert a row, Shift spacebar to select the whole row, Control C to copy it, Control V to paste it, and Alt H D R to delete the row. Okay, now let's take a look at our reference. So bananas is 66207, and when we look at sheet 2, it's 66207. Okay, there it worked, no errors. So even though we moved our data around in the array, we didn't lose our reference. Because index match doesn't care where in that selected array the data is, it just cares what the fishermen are, or those 2 reference points or labels along the side and the top are. So as long as you have the references along the side and the top correct, it can find it anywhere in that array. The only time you will have a problem is if you take bananas here and copy it and paste it outside of the array that we're referencing, and then go Alt H D R to delete this row, and now you'll notice that it's not finding it. But that's because it's outside of our array, because our reference is only D5 through H11, and our reference is all the way down here on row 17. But you can even fix that scenario, and the way you do that is when you write your array, just select the whole column. So instead of having this limited to D5, we just have column D. And rather than having it be H11, we just have it be column H. But if you do that with your index array, then you have to do it with your match arrays as well, because they do have to line up. So we'll take out the rows on our match as well for our labels, and then we can leave the columns as they are. So now we hit enter, and you can see that the reference is working again. Now it doesn't care how far down the spreadsheet bananas is, because our array includes the entire column. So that's how you use index and match together as a nested function to essentially do the same thing that you would with VLOOKUP, except you're not limited to just the left column, and you can find your references even if they move.